In a galaxy torn apart by war, one pivotal moment determined the fate of the galaxy. Anakin Skywalker, once a Jedi Knight, had now embraced his destiny as Darth Vader, the enforcer of the Galactic Empire. It was in the halls of the Emperor's shattered stronghold, after the fall of the Jedi Order, that Anakin made his ultimate decision. The darkness within him swelled, and he finally understood the true cost of power. His rise was not about rebellion, but control. Control over his destiny, over the galaxy's future. When the Emperor fell at his hands, there was no victory dance, no cheers or applause from the galaxy. Instead, Anakin stood in silence. The weight of his actions, the destruction of the only family he had ever known, the Jedi, crushed him. Yet, in that very moment, the seeds for the rise of his empire were sown. He understood that his journey was far from over, it had just begun. The empire would not be built on war and fear alone, but on the ashes of betrayal and redemption. Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader had not been a loss of his soul, but an awakening to a new purpose. Through fear, Anakin would create order. Through fire, he would forge an empire that would last for millennia. Anakin Skywalker had always been a prodigy, gifted with unmatched talent in the Force. As a child, he dreamed of becoming a Jedi, seeking peace and justice across the galaxy. But the events that led him down a dark path were inevitable. His fear of loss, his overwhelming desire to protect those he loved, began to consume him. Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader did not happen overnight. It was a gradual process, the result of decisions made out of fear, anger, and frustration. The turning point came when he was unable to save his mother, Shmi Skywalker. Her death tore through him, fueling a deep anger and sorrow that began to shape his path. But it was his bond with Padmé Amidala that would ultimately push him toward the dark side. The visions of Padmé's death and childbirth haunted him, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not shake the feeling that he would lose her. His desperation led him to seek out any means to prevent that future, even if it meant embracing the very thing the Jedi had warned him against, the dark side of the Force. When Chancellor Palpatine, the puppet master of the galaxy, offered Anakin the power to save Padmé, it was a temptation he could not resist. Palpatine, ever the manipulator, fed into Anakin's fears and promised him the strength to avoid the future he so feared. But this power came at a great cost. Anakin had to betray the very order he had sworn to protect. Anakin's fall was sealed in the dark chambers of the Jedi Temple, where he struck down his brothers and sisters in cold blood. His loyalty to the Jedi Order shattered, leaving him vulnerable to Palpatine's influence. By the time Anakin became Darth Vader, his humanity was slipping away, replaced by a terrifying darkness. No longer the hopeful Jedi, he had embraced the role of enforcer for the Empire. The galaxy would soon learn the true cost of his fall from grace. The Jedi Temple stood tall under the setting sun, its spires reaching into the orange sky. Inside, a quiet calm lingered, the kind that comes before a storm. Anakin Skywalker, once the chosen one, now walked its sacred halls not as a protector, but as its destroyer. He had made his choice. The words of Chancellor Palpatine still echoed in his mind, promises of saving Padmé, of ending the war, of bringing peace. But peace at what cost? Anakin stepped forward, leading an army of clone troopers into the heart of the temple. Younglings, knights, and masters all turned to him, trusting the hero of the Republic. They didn't see the Sith Lord beneath the cloak. They didn't see Darth Vader. Lightsabers ignited, but it was too late. Anakin was no longer fighting for the Jedi, he was fighting against them. Master Shakti tried to stop him, pleading with him to remember who he was. But he didn't hesitate. Her blade fell. Others followed. In every corner of the temple, screams of confusion and betrayal filled the air. Clone troopers opened fire, their blasters lighting up the once sacred chambers. The smell of smoke and scorched stone filled the air. Anakin pressed forward, emotionless, yet burning inside. With each Jedi that fell, he severed another piece of his old self. A part of Anakin died with every life he ended, but he didn't stop, because in his mind, it was the only way to save the one he loved, Padmé. In the High Council chamber, he stood alone, the room where great masters once sat in wisdom now lay in ruins. Anakin gazed out at the burning city, breathing heavily. Tears welled in his eyes, but they didn't fall. He had done what needed to be done. The Jedi were traitors, he told himself. They were weak. They would have let her die. Now, they were gone, and in their place a new power would rise. The darkness had won, and Anakin Skywalker was no more. Only Darth Vader remained. The dark halls of the Galactic Senate echoed with silence. Anakin Skywalker stood before the massive windows overlooking the Coruscant skyline. Behind him, Darth Sidious, known to the galaxy as Emperor Palpatine, approached with slow, deliberate steps. The Jedi were gone. The Republic had fallen. But something within Anakin remained unsettled. For years he had followed the path laid out by the Emperor. Promises of saving Padmé, of bringing order to the galaxy, had consumed his mind. He had done everything, betrayed the Jedi, slaughtered his own brothers, burned bridges with Obi-Wan. All for a vision, all for a lie. As Palpatine moved closer, his voice slithered through the shadows. Now, Lord Vader, we will begin a new age. Together, we will rule the galaxy. Anakin clenched his fists. He looked down at the mechanical hand that had replaced what was once human. He remembered the pain, the screams, the fire on Mustafar, and he remembered Padmé, her tearful face, her last words. She believed there was still good in me. Anakin whispered. Palpatine paused, sensing the shift. You don't need her, the Emperor said coldly. She was weak. Attachment is forbidden. Anakin turned. His lightsaber ignited with a sharp hiss. Red clashed against the dark glow of the Emperor's own blade. The room exploded into violence. Furniture burned, walls cracked. Force lightning danced through the air. Palpatine's face twisted with rage, blasting Anakin with bolts of pure power. But Anakin stood firm. Step by step, he moved through the storm, his armor sparking, his skin burning. With one final cry, Anakin brought his saber down, cleaving through the Emperor's defense. Sidious fell to his knees, his mouth still whispering lies, still promising more power. But Anakin had heard enough. With a final stroke, he ended it. Silence returned. Smoke curled through the air. The galaxy shifted. Anakin stood alone, his breathing heavy. The Emperor was dead. He looked at his reflection in the shattered glass. Darth Vader had risen, but for the first time, he wasn't following anyone's plan. He was in control, and a new empire, his empire, was about to begin. The galaxy had changed. Anakin Skywalker, once a heroic Jedi Knight, now walked the path of Darth Vader. The roar of war had faded, the Jedi temple lay in ruins, and the Emperor was gone, slain by the very hand he had corrupted. But as silence spread across the stars, it was not victory Anakin felt, it was emptiness. In the dark corridors of the old Senate chamber, he stood alone. No more orders to follow, no more Jedi to defy. He had everything he thought he wanted: power, control, and the throne of the galaxy. But in the cold stillness, memories came like ghosts. Visions of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the brother he once loved. Flashes of Padmé Amidala, the woman he lost trying to save. Laughter of Ahsoka Tano, his former apprentice, echoing in the back of his mind. They haunted him now, not as enemies, but as reminders of what he used to be. He tried to suppress it, to embrace the strength the dark side promised. But inside, Anakin felt the war still raging. One side whispered that this was the destiny he was meant to fulfill. The other cried out in pain, mourning the choices he had made. He looked at his own reflection in a shattered glass window. Not the face of a hero, not the chosen one of prophecy. Just a man broken by fear, twisted by loss. Yet the galaxy saw him as unstoppable. Darth Vader, the Emperor Slayer, ruler of the new empire. Every system he brought under control, every rebel he crushed, only added to the silence within him. Order was rising, but peace never came. Not to him. He had saved the galaxy from what he believed was chaos, but he couldn't save himself from guilt. Anakin Skywalker was no longer bound by Jedi chains. But the cost of freedom was heavy, and in that endless battle within, he realized something terrifying. He had won. But at what price? He had become the very darkness he once vowed to destroy, and though the stars obeyed him now, his own heart no longer did. The galaxy trembled in silence. The Jedi temple stood in ruins. The council was gone. The Republic had collapsed, and in the heart of Coruscant, deep within the shadows of the former Senate chambers, stood Anakin Skywalker, no longer a Jedi, but something far more powerful. The body of Emperor Palpatine lay motionless at Anakin's feet. He had done the unthinkable. Anakin had destroyed the very man who once promised him unlimited power. He had crushed the Sith Master not for the Jedi, not for the Republic, but for himself. In that single moment, Anakin Skywalker chose to become the master of his own destiny. As the skies of Coruscant burned from the chaos of war, Anakin emerged from the wreckage wearing a new face. No longer bound by the ideals of the Jedi or the manipulation of the Sith, he forged a new identity: Darth Vader, supreme commander of the Empire. Stormtroopers knelt before him. Star Destroyers began to regroup under his command. He gave no grand speech, no declaration of victory, only silence. A cold silence that spread across systems like a shadow. The galaxy watched as a new power rose, not born from politics or prophecy, but from pain, rage, and clarity. Anakin wasted no time. He reorganized the Republic's fractured remains into a structured hierarchy. He eliminated rogue separatist leaders who refused to submit. Systems once loyal to the Jedi were brought under his control with swift and ruthless efficiency. To many, he was a tyrant. To others, a savior. Order returned, but it came wrapped in fear. Anakin's empire was not built overnight, nor with celebration. It was forged in fire, in betrayal, and in a vision he believed the galaxy needed. One where chaos would never reign again. And as the twin suns rose over Mustafar, where his transformation began, Darth Vader stood alone, a ruler without chains, a man who had burned everything he loved to build the only thing he believed could last. The Empire had been born, not from hope, but from the ashes of Anakin Skywalker. With Emperor Palpatine gone, Anakin Skywalker stood at the helm of a crumbling galaxy. The Republic had fallen, and the Jedi were no more. Now, as Darth Vader, Anakin took his first steps into reshaping the galaxy, not just through brute strength, but through unyielding order. He began by bringing the scattered remnants of the Republic's systems under his control. One by one, planets that had once stood independent were brought to heel. Darth Vader personally oversaw the enforcement of new laws. He ordered the construction of surveillance networks and demanded total loyalty. His voice became law, his presence fear. To the senators who remained, he offered no negotiation, only submission. Many protested, but their voices were silenced. Anakin believed that the galaxy had been too free, too chaotic. It needed structure, and he would be the one to provide it. Stormtroopers replaced clone troopers, and new factories rose from the ruins of war. Anakin prioritized strength. He crushed resistance cells before they could grow and made examples of traitors. The people of the galaxy slowly learned order under Vader meant survival. Defiance meant extinction. Yet, there was still a piece of Anakin within him, buried deep. He visited Naboo, alone and masked, standing in silence at Padmé's grave. The pain remained, but he used it as fuel. In his mind, he wasn't destroying the galaxy, he was saving it from itself. Anakin implemented strict codes for planetary governors. No tolerance for corruption. No second chances for failure. He appointed Grand Moff Tarkin to oversee operations in the Outer Rim, ensuring every sector followed his vision. Even as Vader's empire expanded, he worked tirelessly in secret, seeking ancient Sith knowledge to strengthen his rule. Holocrons and relics were gathered across the stars. He studied them late into the nights aboard his flagship, the Executor. To his enemies, he was a tyrant. To his supporters, he was a savior. But in truth, Darth Vader was a man shaped by loss, driven by a vision only he understood. And so, the galaxy was no longer a collection of stars divided by conflict. It was now the Empire united under one name, Vader. After taking his final steps into darkness, Anakin Skywalker had become Darth Vader, not just in name, but in purpose. The Jedi were gone, the Republic dissolved, and the galaxy was now under the rule of the Empire. But rule alone wasn't enough. Control had to be maintained. Loyalty had to be enforced. Order had to be absolute. And for that, Darth Vader learned the power of fear. He quickly discovered that fear could do what diplomacy and kindness could not. Fear silenced rebellion before it began. Fear turned proud senators into obedient tools. Fear kept systems in line without the need for war. In his black armor, with his deep, mechanical breathing echoing through the halls, Vader became a symbol, a shadow that fell over entire star systems. His mere presence caused enemies to surrender and allies to tremble. He didn't need to raise his voice. He didn't need to make threats. His silence spoke louder than any blaster. When he entered a room, people stood still. When he gave an order, it was followed without hesitation. On planets like Lothal, even the mention of his name was enough to quiet crowds. He led with an iron will, punishing failure without mercy. Yet behind the mask, there was still a man who once wanted peace, a man who once wanted to save the people he loved. Now he enforced control by destroying all who opposed him. He crushed resistance with a wave of his hand, using the Force not just as a weapon, but as a reminder of what power truly looked like. Darth Vader became more than a man, he became fear itself, and the galaxy bent to his will. Even the bravest warriors hesitated in his shadow. Even the strongest hearts doubted their strength in his presence. This fear, carefully crafted, was no accident. It was his strategy, it was his shield, and it was his legacy. As the Empire expanded, Vader ensured that every citizen knew one truth: disobedience would not be tolerated, because where hope once lived, Darth Vader had planted fear, and fear obeys. Even as Darth Vader stood atop the ashes of the Republic, his soul remained restless. Behind the black mask and armor, Anakin Skywalker still lived, buried deep, but not forgotten. His heart, once full of hope and dreams, had been consumed by pain, betrayal, and the hunger to protect those he loved. But protection, as he now understood, had come at a terrible price. Anakin had believed that by embracing the dark side he could save Padmé, end the war, and bring peace to the galaxy. But peace never came. Instead, his actions led to her death, the fall of the Jedi, and the birth of a cold, fear-driven empire. Yet, within that silence of power, something stirred. Anakin, though cloaked in Vader's darkness, began to see the cracks in what he had built. He would execute traitors, crush rebellions, and enforce law, but not out of blind cruelty. No, in his mind, this was justice, this was order. He believed the galaxy had been broken and chaotic under the Jedi, and only through strength could it be fixed. Still, the pain never left him. He often stood alone in his chambers, haunted by memories of Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, and most of all Padmé. These ghosts reminded him that the man he once was had not died completely. In moments of silence, he would look out into the stars and wonder if she would have forgiven him. Would she understand that everything he had done was for her? When Darth Vader saw the innocent suffer under his command, a flicker of regret would burn within. But instead of reversing his path, he doubled down, telling himself that the ends justified the means. He believed in a galaxy ruled not by weak ideals, but by decisive, unstoppable power. This was Anakin's form of redemption. Not through forgiveness, but through control. He sought to end chaos by becoming its master. He believed that if the galaxy feared him, they would never face war again. But deep down, a quiet hope remained. A hope that one day, someone, perhaps a child of light, could finish what he had failed to do, bring true balance to the Force. And that hope kept Anakin alive inside Darth Vader. Of course! Here's the expanded 380-word version of The Reign of Darth Vader, written in English, with proper spacing between lines, structured for voice-over storytelling, and suited for your global audience with a 16:9 visual storytelling format. The galaxy had fallen silent. Under the shadow of Darth Vader, systems that once thrived under the Jedi's protection now trembled in fear. With each step he took, the sound of his breathing became a symbol of submission. Planets bowed not out of loyalty, but terror. After seizing control from Emperor Palpatine, Vader wasted no time. He expanded the Empire's reach, sending fleets into distant star systems, crushing resistance before it could rise. From the ashes of war, he built something brutal and absolute. There were no negotiations, only commands. Vader ruled not with words but with presence. His black armor and burning red blade became a living nightmare. He did not need armies to break a rebellion, he was the weapon. Jedi survivors who escaped Order 66 were hunted without mercy. Each one he struck down tightened his grip on the galaxy. Each scream silenced meant one more system under control. People whispered his name with dread. Even the highest-ranking officers in the Imperial Navy feared his wrath. A single misstep could end their lives in an instant. The Force obeyed him with terrifying precision. Doors opened at his will. Enemies choked without a touch. He had become more machine than man, yet his will remained unbreakable. Despite his iron rule, some still hoped. Secretly, quietly, a spark began to glow. But Vader saw it. He crushed hope before it spread. He erased symbols of the Republic. He banned Jedi teachings. He turned temples into prisons. His voice, deep and distorted, echoed across communication towers. There is no freedom, only order. Behind his mask, Anakin Skywalker's face was gone. Only Darth Vader remained. The galaxy was his to command. And for nearly 2 decades, the Empire flourished under the unrelenting reign of the Dark Lord. But power came at a cost. Alone in his fortress, Vader often stood at the edge of the void, gazing into space. Not as a man proud of victory, but as a warrior burdened by what he had become. Still, he ruled. The stars obeyed. The systems surrendered. And Darth Vader reigned supreme. Anakin Skywalker's path to darkness was long and filled with pain, but in the end, it wasn't just his fall that shaped the galaxy. It was his son, Luke Skywalker, who would bring about the change that the galaxy desperately needed. For many years, Anakin lived with the weight of his decisions. As Darth Vader, he led the Empire with fear and power, his mind consumed by his need to protect those he loved, but twisted by the darkness that had taken hold of him. His every action, driven by the loss of his mother and his deep fears of losing Padmé, pushed him further down the path to darkness. However, despite all the pain and destruction, something within Anakin remained unbroken. Beneath the mask of Darth Vader, a small flicker of the Jedi he once was still existed. His connection to the Force was not entirely lost, and that connection would ultimately play a crucial role in the galaxy's future. Luke Skywalker, his son, was the key. The very thing Anakin had once feared, a child born of hope, was now the galaxy's only hope for redemption. As the years passed, Anakin's dark reign seemed unshakable. The Empire spread its grip across the stars, and the rebellion struggled to make a difference. But as Luke grew and began to uncover the truth of his father's past, he saw something others didn't. The potential for good still lingered within Anakin. Luke's belief in his father never wavered, even as the galaxy turned against them. It was this faith, this unwavering hope, that became the foundation for Anakin's eventual redemption. When Luke faced Darth Vader in the heart of the Empire, the moment of truth arrived. It was in the presence of his son that Anakin saw a reflection of the man he once was, a man full of hope and promise. In that moment, the darkness that had consumed Anakin for so long began to recede, allowing him to make the ultimate sacrifice to save his son and the galaxy. Anakin's journey, though steeped in tragedy, set the stage for the eventual return of hope. Through his son, Luke, the galaxy would find the strength to rebuild and heal, forever remembering the sacrifices made by both father and son.